I've already used a number of Java's operators in my examples, but I'll take a moment now to go through them in detail. Java's syntax is based on C. It's a C-style language, and so it uses most of the same operators that you'll find in most C-style languages, including C, C++, C#, JavaScript, and so on. There are various types of operators. The equality operators are used to compare values to each other. Assignment operators do exactly what it says, assign values. And there are mathematical operators and logical operators. Here are some of the most common assignment and math operators. When you declare a variable in Java, you always start with the data type, followed by the name of the variable. But you don't have to immediately assign a value. The default value will depend on whether the variable is a primitive or an object. But if you want to assign a value, you use the single equals character as the assignment operator. The data type and variable name go on the left and the value on the right. This would be a simple assignment. But you can also execute mathematical operations as you assign a value. These would be expressions that evaluate to the correct data type. The plus operator is for addition, the minus operator for subtraction, the asterisk for multiplication, and the / for division. There's also the percent character, which is the remainder operator, also known in some languages as the modulus operator. Here are some other things you can do with assignments and mathematical operations. I'm starting with an integer value of 10. You can increment and decrement that value with a plus plus or a minus minus, and that operator can go either before or after the variable name. I'll talk about the effect of that in just a moment. You can also increment or decrement and assign values at the same time using these operators. Plus equals means assign the value and execute the math operation. Minus equals does the same thing for subtraction. And there's also asterisk equals and divide equals. Now, about placing the increment and decrementing operators before or after a variable name. Once again, I'm starting with an integer value of 10. If you place the plus plus operator after the variable name, that's called a postfix assignment. You're evaluating the value and then executing the math. In this example, I'd be outputting a value of 10, but then resetting the value to 11. If you move the operator before the variable name, that's called a prefix. Then you're executing the math and then evaluating the value. And then your output and your new value would be the same. The equality operators are used to compare values to each other. The double equals operator is called the equality operator. With primitive values, it compares the actual values. With reference variables, though, that is, variables that point to objects, you're comparing whether the two variables are pointing to the same object, not necessarily whether they have a same value. The inequality operator is exclamation equals. Some Java developers like to call the exclamation mark the bang operator. But again, this simply means not equals to, and it has the same rules as the equality operator. Primitive variables are evaluated by their values, and reference variables by whether they point to the same object. In addition to double equals and not equals, you also have greater than, less than, greater than or equal, less than or equal, and a special operator called instance of that asks whether an object is an instance of a particular class. So, for example, if I have a string and I have a condition of s instance of java.lang.string, that's the fully qualified name of that class, then my condition would be true, and I could say, yes, this variable is a string. One of the exceptions to comparing values is with strings. Strings cannot be safely compared to each other using the equals operators. It'll work in some circumstances and not in others, and I'll describe the details of that later in this course. But I'll just say now that if you want to compare strings to each other, you shouldn't use the equals or not equals operators. Instead, you should use the string class's equals method. There's one version of this method that's case sensitive, this one, and another version that compares values without case sensitivity. And again, I'll describe those details a little bit later on. The result of this code would be they match. And then finally, there are the logical operators. The double ampersand is the AND operator. The double pipe character is the OR operator, and you can use those to combine two conditional expressions and get a result. And then there's the ternary operator that looks like this. You examine a Boolean condition, and then after the question mark, you set a value you want to assign if the condition is true, and after the colon, a value you want to assign if the condition is false. This is shorthand for an if-then conditional statement. Some developers love using this expression. I tend to avoid it. I tend to use a more verbose if-then statement because I think it's easier to read and maintain later on. But this expression absolutely works and is very popular in the Java programming world. So that's a summary of the most commonly used operators in Java. There are a few others, include operators known as bitwise operators, but they're used less commonly, and I encourage you to look at the Java documentation for a complete look at all of the operators that are available.